everybody. Sorry about that. I have no idea what the fuck happened. But I figured I would restart and have my bathroom break, and we'll continue where we left off with our heart attack grill video. We were learning about the unhealthiest restaurant in America. I'll back it up a tiny bit. Hello, Fox Azure. Haven't seen you in a bit. Glad to have you here. Glad to have you here.
It's grotesque. They'll say, how can you keep the man's cremation here?
With Basso keeping the cremation inside the restaurant as he wants you to know his food kills so that maybe you'll stop eating junk. This man is willing to sacrifice his reputation and maybe even his humanity to try and make the world a healthier place. I respect him for it. Basso believes the restaurant helps customers to reflect on their own choices, having stated anybody who's over 3 home and give them free food all they want. But these people go home at night and they ponder that and say, wow, why did I just get free food and have the whole restaurant applauding for me because I'm a freak, plain and simple, before adding I'm running an obesity intervention and I think it works.
That is not how that... Seriously, if you... Would you do this for a fucking drug addict? Would you be like, oh, fine, you want to do heroin? Cool, here's all the fucking heroin you want. Here, let me help you with that spoon. Oh, are your hands shaking? Here, let me hold the needle for you. Like, what the fuck? That's not an intervention.
I really do. Everybody should check out our Facebook and see a lot of people say, hey Dr. John, I've lost 82 pounds since the last time I was in. It's the X Factor, something that snapped in that person that said, wow, I'm gonna make a change in my life, and they did, and that's fabulous.
I'm thinking maybe doing coffee streams at 10 o'clock. Because that's an actual coffee stream time. It'll be around lunchtime for people, like in the East Coast area. It'll be good for like the Central and Pacific time people for breakfast, so.
With this sentiment also showing up in the YouTube comments. The Heart Attack Grill restaurant has motivated me to take care of myself, stick to my diet. The namesake restaurant actually sends a very positive message. If you don't take care of yourself today, you might find yourself eating a free meal at my restaurant in the not so distant future, because everyone over 350 pounds eats for free, and therefore Basso believes the restaurant is an overall positive.
I am a believer that when people hear my message, the net health benefit to society is incredibly good.
However, you won't be
I'm not sure about that, sir. I really don't think so.
The net health benefit to society is incredibly good.
However, you won't be surprised to hear that not everybody agrees.
He's deliberately trying to get people to eat more than they need.
With this being echoed by the legendary Anthony Bourdain, who stated, there is a restaurant in...
Right, Fox? Right? Like, guy hurts kids. Oh, here are some children.
Vegas,
right?
I think it's called the Heart Attack Grill, where if you're over 350 pounds, you eat for free. I think that should be pretty much a war crime. On top of this, a former waitress went public, talking about her terrible time working at the restaurant, explaining that after a man passed out mid-meal, a manager made me take out my cell phone to record a video of the whole thing so they could send it to the media. It was...
What the fuck? That's messed up. Guy's in a legit, like, food coma. He's probably had a stroke. And the manager's making this girl film him? Isn't that an invasion of privacy as well?
It was on a Friday afternoon, and he hoped it would make the news so they could have a busy weekend. On the opposite end of the spectrum, a different waitress stated this.
I've been here 11 years. I enjoy this way too much.
So the experience clearly depends on which person you ask. In a different instance, the PCRM sent a letter to Basso asking him to declare moral bankruptcy and close the Heart Attack Grill. However, given the restaurant earned $5.5 million in revenue last year, it seems obvious that Dr. John Basso and the Heart Attack Grill won't be going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, and here's the thing. There's a certain type of person that did he consent to it? I don't know. I really don't know if there's if you have to sign a waiver to go there or what. But yeah, I even like that's just bad. Like, I don't think that that's legal at all. What a great question. Oh, what's a great question?
Aside.
Let's figure this out. Let's find out what a great question is. Let's see. Oh, this is a short one.
Aside from a few minor things here and there, there's really not a whole lot of difference, and as well as the look. Now, bear with me, it's been a few years since I was on tanks. I was a 19-kilo armor crewman from 2009 until 2012 when I reclassed to air defense. Wasn't my choice, just where I'm at now, and I have the best job in the Army. Anywhere I go, I'll tell you I have the best job in the Army, period. Now, the British Challenger 2 is often regaled, I think that's the right word there, it feels right, anyways, as one of the most survivable tanks that have ever been made. But aside from a few minor differences, it's not really any different. Like, up until recently, the Challenger 2 had a rifled barrel. The Abrams had smoothbore. Now the Challenger has smoothbore. The Leopard, I think, still runs smoothbore. I'm not sure. Armor thickness and composition.
I'm confused as to why I was sent this.
Platforms. The thing is, the United Kingdom operates between 170 and 200 British Challenger tanks. Does this mean that they're better built, that they're more expensive? I mean, you could compare prices, apples and oranges. There's a lot of minor details, but ultimately you're going to find out that they're relatively comparable. And in modern combat, tank v tank, it's really going to come down to who sees the other first and who gets that shot off first, because the Sabo don't give a shit. It'll go through a Challenger, it'll go through an Abrams, it'll go through a Leopard, it'll go through a T-90, it'll go through a Merkava. Pick your poison. Plus, in modern combat, tanks are at a serious disadvantage with modern anti-tank weapons. You get a couple of really well-trained...
I have no idea why I was sent this. I can't even read what the question is. He doesn't say what the question is. And he's talking about shit I know nothing about. Okay. I'm sitting here like, what? Why? I'm like, I'm so confused. I don't understand. Okay.
Desperate time.
This is more what... Okay. How the British Murder Act scared criminals straight. Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Desperate times sometimes call for desperate measures.
Oh,
that
weird
was
history.
Extremely apparent in 18th century England. Violent crime was so out of control during this period that the British Parliament was willing to go to drastic lengths to restore order.
I actually think I've heard of the Murder Act. I can't quite recall the specifics of it, but it sounds familiar.
But they may have gone a little too far. So, today on Weird History, we're looking back at how the British Murder Act of 1751 scared criminals straight. But before we get into all the crime and punishment, head down into the comments and let us know which piece of crime history you would like to hear about next. Okay, time to break the law, like Judas Priest.
Woohoo! Break the law like
Before
Judas
we dig into
Priest.
the British Murder Act, or BMA, it's worth considering why it was necessary in the first place. Just what made mid-18th century Britain such a dangerous time and place?
The fact that Australia hadn't been found yet and colonized for a penal colony. No, literally. Some of the most fucked up people. I swear to God. They didn't get sent to the States, man. They got the British people, they had all these whack jobs, and they thought they sent most of them to Australia, and then they figured out, no, they're still here. We've got a colder, more harsh place. Off you go to fucking British North America, you assholes. Get out. Get out, you crazy motherfuckers. That's why Canada has so many crazy-ass serial killers to this day. That's
it turns
my
out,
theory.
as is usually the case with major decades-long trends, there isn't one simple answer. The Georgian era in British history runs from around 1714 to the 1830s.
Yep.
And that wasn't just a catchy name. The period was so named because the country was ruled by 4 consecutive kings named George, like the chore rotation at George Foreman's house. followed by the brief tenure of William IV. It's a period in English history that's often associated with major contributions to the arts, political history, and architecture, in the name George. But it was also a moment of immense social and economic change. The Georgian period coincides with the early industrial and agricultural revolutions.
Yes, it does. In Britain, this is in the 1830s is when slavery was abolished as well. We had the exploration and colonization of British North America going on. We had the War of 1812 to deal with. We had other European conflicts. We had the Napoleonic Wars to deal with,
which saw the general decline of smaller rural communities and the movement of large masses of people into big cities, as well as overseas to British colonies in North America and elsewhere. Hey, everyone was doing it. Moving a large, spread-out mass of people into a densely populated inner-city environment is going to lead to a rise in criminal activity, because there are so many more opportunities for crime. You don't have to walk 3 villages over to rob someone who doesn't know your last name or where you live if you have hundreds of neighbors. Work smarter, not harder. Workers crammed together in slum-like lodging houses would often find themselves engaged in conflicts that would occasionally lead to assaults or even fatalities. Industrialization also led to an increase in poverty, which of course also contributed to the rising crime rate.
Yes.
Along with the increased opportunity for lawbreaking, the lower classes were now facing starvation, high unemployment, and lack of prospects.
Yeah, so this was all, and this is still, they're recovering still from the Great Fire of London in the 1660s and the plague outbreak in the 1660s.
And other disadvantages that make a life of crime more appealing. Criminality in some ways was also baked into the culture of the UK at this time. As in the Wild West of American history, in some cases, criminals and robbers were glamorized by the UK media for their brazen deeds. With
the highwayman, the man running away to join the pirate crew.
So-called highwaymen in particular capturing the public's imagination. Just as in the Robin Hood stories of the medieval period, tales of bold outlaws stealing from the wealthy were published in pamphlets, books, and newspapers of the time. And some particularly brazen criminals gained a certain measure of celebrity. When professional thief Jack Sheppard was hanged in 1724, after making 4 daring prison escapes, 200,000 people attended the execution. That's almost twice the amount of people at any given day of Coachella.
That's crazy. 200,000 people attending one execution. That's insane. I could think of a city this is happening to right now. Yep.
When infamous highwayman John Rann was released from prison in 1774, he was reportedly mobbed by a crowd of admirers. He was presumably asked to do dance cameos in a number of TikTok videos. 18th century Britain also took a much more relaxed attitude toward law enforcement and policing than most societies of the present day. Parishes would often employ just 1 or 2 constables for an entire region. Many of them unpaid volunteers working part-time.
That sucks. First of all, that's a huge swath of territory for 2 people to take care of, and then you're volunteering?
Or even subcontracting the job out to others to enforce law in their stead. Like getting someone to cover your shift at Subway so you can go see Batman. Larger cities like London would have paid professional law enforcement, often in the form of night watchmen known as Charlies. They did police work and provided basic community services, like accompanying drunks home at night, or walking the streets and announcing the time, like an iPhone app. So
really? They would walk around and just be like, it's 6 o'clock! It's 7:30.
So, you had a society that romanticized crime, in which many people were living in poverty in extremely close quarters, with virtually no real authority figures in place to keep the peace. It is a recipe for a significant upswing in violent crime.
I was gonna say, sounds like fun!
Which is precisely what happened. When there's a rise in a certain kind of crime, one possible response is making the punishment for that crime more severe, as a deterrent. The thinking goes that you might steal a Mr. Goodbar if all you're going to get is a stern lecture. But if the cost of pilfering that peanut treat were a public flogging, you might think twice. But in Britain at the time, that didn't seem to be the case. In Georgian England, capital punishment, meaning curtains, lights out, a trip to the old hangman, was already the standard punishment for a whole array of crimes,
Right.
even some considered pretty minor by modern-day standards.
Yeah, that, like, how do you make things more punishable? Oh, I think I just got bits.
In 1689, England and Wales had 50 offenses on the books for which you could be executed. By 1776, that number had quadrupled.
Where's my event
Capital offenses in
thingy?
18th century England included obvious stuff like violent crimes, high treason, and piracy. But they also included burglary, blackmail, poaching, embezzlement, forgery, identity theft, arson, and even some kinds of insurance fraud. Imagine getting sent to the noose because you told
Thank
your
you,
insurance
Lord
company
Fremen,
you
for the
don't know
biddies.
where those dents could have come from. There were so many capital offenses during this time period that the 18th century legal system came to be known as the Bloody Code. Though at the time they just called it
Wow.
the Code. So
The Bloody
Parliament was
Code,
faced
huh?
with a problem. How do you reduce your violent crime rate if the punishment for so many crimes is already death? What's worse than that?
Nothing?
As their response to the increasing violence of their cities, Parliament approved the British Murder Act of 1751.
The British Murder Act? What the fuck does that mean? Let's find
Or
out.
BMA, which technically passed into law in March of 1752. The main idea was that in addition to punishing criminals who committed homicide, the state would also denigrate and shame their corpses in a vindictive manner as a dire warning to other potential offenders. The law specifically mandated that the sentence for a homicide conviction could only be carried out in one of two ways: a public dissection or being hanged in chains. Is there a
Wait.
Presbyterian option?
They're gonna desecrate the corpse too? Jesus Christ, that's a little bit, that's a little bit weird.
BMA also stipulated that the bodies of convicted criminals should not be buried. Often they
Oh.
were left hanging at the site of their execution, as a way of shaming the criminals and their family,
Lovely.
as well as sending a signal to others contemplating similar life choices. The condemned were also denied customary visits from members of the clergy, denying them the ability to atone for their sins and ask for forgiveness. These punishments
So no last rites, desecration of the corpse, no laying to rest, just hanging out there for nature to take care of, and for everybody to be like, Jesus Christ, I better not steal that loaf of bread.
punishments would have been particularly offensive to religious Christians, many of whom believed that their bodies needed to be buried and intact, and all of their sins forgiven, in order to rise to heaven on Judgment Day. This sacred ground
It
belief,
really is.
coupled with a lack of cemeteries in cities to serve
And we wonder why Jesus Christ, even high society in Britain was fucked up. Jesus, man, why do we wonder why there are so many insane murderers in Australia and Canada? It's like, gee, I don't know. Maybe because they're descendants from British crazy people?
service a growing population, led to situations where people were often piled on top of one another within the same grave in order to accommodate everyone. When poet William Blake passed away in 1827, he was apparently buried at Bunhill Fields on top of 3 more corpses, with 4 more gravemates packed on top of him. Rumor has it that the
Jesus.
St. Marbalin Parish is home to 100,000 deceased, all buried under 1 acre of soil. Let's hope those graves are pretty deep, or else that place must
That's crazy.
be a pain
Costin,
in
did
the
you
ass to
try
mow.
weed?
If you were a firm
That's
believer,
funny.
the threat of missing an opportunity to ascend to the afterlife would have been far more terrifying than the gallows. But it didn't
Yeah.
stop there. Additional provisions in the BMA were aimed at the family, friends, and loved ones of the convicted.
God damn, what is this, some Klingon shit? For 7 generations, your family will be dishonored.
Rather than just the criminals themselves. Anyone attempting to help someone escape prison or execution were themselves guilty of a capital offense. It was also illegal to try and salvage a person's remains following their sentencing in an attempt to save their
Fuck.
souls. Anyone caught trying to do so would be arrested and sent to a prison colony for 7 years.
Jesus Christ! Wow! There is no redemption for a criminal here. Wow. That's crazy.
Comparatively speaking, you got off light.
Also, if you smoked oil for your first time, that was probably a bad idea. Always start
Both
with
forms
flour.
of sentencing laid out by the BMA involved hangings, which were elaborate public spectacles at the time, often attended by thousands of witnesses. Hey, WrestleMania didn't exist yet. Boredom was
Yeah, why were we obsessed with watching people die? That's a little bit fucked up.
a real issue. In some cases, rather than a simple hanging, a judge might sentence a prisoner to gibbeting, which involved placing their body inside a metal cage, which was then publicly displayed from a special gallows-type structure known as a gibbet, until the person perished and started rotting, like that fruit bowl you put out with the best of intentions.
Oh,
In
eat it.
cases where
Yeah,
gibbeting was
eating it
not
might be
performed,
better for
the
you.
bodies were removed from the gallows and taken to the town's surgeons, who would
Oh, lovely. Yeah, Costin, if you're like brand new to weed, you might actually benefit from the edibles at the dispensary because they're such low dose that you might be able to handle it without like for somebody like me, they're worthless, right? But for somebody like you, 10 milligrams might just be enough.
then use them for medical and scientific research. It's likely that
Well,
some
that's
criminals
at least
survived the
something.
hangings, and so it is
Ah!
therefore possible that some may have even lived long enough to experience the dissection process.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Okay, that's really fucked up. Nah. Why does Europe have such fucked up shit happening?
But it's best not to think about that too much.
Yeah.
British artist William Hogarth witnessed some of these dissections happening at the Royal College of Physicians and memorialized the gruesome scenes in a series of etchings known as the 4 Stages of Cruelty. In one image, doctors casually chat and read while a surgeon, unpacks a fresh corpse.
Oh, good. Unpacking. That's what it's called, huh?
Meanwhile, a dog in the foreground is about to devour a disembodied heart.
Whoa.
Science! The first criminal sentenced under the BMA was a teenager named Thomas Wilford, who was
A
convicted of
teenager.
slashing his wife's neck only 4 days after being married and subsequently was hanged at Tyburn in 1752.
What a lovely young fellow. Slashing his wife's neck 4 days after wedding her. Lovely.
After finding him guilty, the court ordered him to be taken to prison for a week, where he'd be served only bread and water. After that, he was taken to the gallows and then publicly dissected and anatomized,
Oh,
which means he was
shit.
displayed like an anatomy model to reveal the inner structure of the body.
That's insane. Look, people. Here we have this man's heart. Oh, look at that. It's still kind of beating a little bit. Isn't that interesting, folks?
Science? And a bread and water stipulation was common after the passage of the BMA, as an additional punishment. Previously, some criminals had been granted the right to what was known as a hangman's meal, similar to the modern American notion of the last meal served on death row. The condemned could order basically whatever they wanted for their hangman's meal, and it would be served along with wine or beer. They didn't even have to share any with the hangman, despite the name. But the BMA eliminated such luxuries and ordered that the condemned only receive the bare minimum to keep them alive until their sentence was carried out.
Pincolo's the same way, Fox Asher. He's eaten like 1,000 milligram thing before, and he's been like, yeah, nothing.
By the 19th century, the crime rate in the UK started to decrease. Though there were some calls even in the 1700s for repealing the BMA. Many
Gee, I wonder why. Because most people in society were like, okay, I'm alright with hanging, but like this other shit is kind of a lot.
lawmakers hesitated to roll back the severe rules for fear of losing access to so many corpses, which had proved vital to a number of pioneering medical breakthroughs. This is known as the mad scientist's dilemma. The act remained intact until 1823, when Parliament amended the criminal justice
The
system by
mad
reversing many of the
scientist's
previous
dilemma.
rules, making capital punishment discretionary for all crimes except treason and homicide. In 1828, the BMA was further softened, but not repealed, by another new law, the Offenses Against the Person Act. And in 1837, Parliament relaxed even more regulations, notably eliminating the mandatory death sentence for anyone who tried to help a condemned prisoner escape.
Oh, well, that's good, I guess.
Public anonymization, though, may still be on the table. So what
Oh,
do you think?
all right, then.
Were these laws a necessary evil, or did they go too far?
Have they been repealed as of yet, or is public atomization still a thing? That's crazy. Oh, I've eaten there was a TikTok live once where somebody sent me like I think it was like a 300 milligram peanut butter Reese's peanut butter bar, and I ate the whole fucking thing in one go, and I was just like, wee. Oh, it was bad. But it was funny. Okay, what else? I think there's one more video. I think. Yes. No. Oh shit. Yeah, I really wish that I could play because I really wish I could play the Nickelback song I'm talking about, because it reminds me so much of, it makes me think of Trudeau, and because of his Alberta, like his connections to Alberta and everything, it makes me, like, it really makes me wonder. But yeah, it's what do I do now? We've covered all the videos, and I've done a total of I started at 10:30. It is 12:25. Oh shit. Well, what do you know? Yeah, those laws definitely did go too far. Way too far. Way too far. I agree. Those were some insane freaking laws. Like, there are just, like, I'm sorry, if you're gonna use criminals that you've killed for science, fine, but do we need to publicly dissect them? I don't think so. I really don't. And this is coming from somebody who loves horror movies, right? So back to the beginning. Yes, go back and listen. Go back and listen. Oh man. Okay, you know what? I think cuz already I have to go back to the bathroom. So I think between this and the other hour and whatever, that's going to total 2 hours. I'll be back tonight with some MK. I'm going to try to go through some invasions mode because I've gotten my chores done and shit. So I'm going to try and do some of that. And we will see you later tonight. Thank you for hanging out with me. And if you missed some of the stuff, go back and listen to it.